Chapter 31 Master of the Blade. The next day was easier on both of them. Eragon felt better and was able to answer more of Brom's questions correctly. After an especially difficult exercise, Eragon mentioned his scrying of the woman. Brom pulled on his beard. "You say she was imprisoned?" "Yes." "Did you see her face?" asked Brom intently. "Not very clearly. The lighting was bad, yet I could tell that she was beautiful. It's strange. I didn't have any problem seeing her eyes, and she did look at me." Brom shook his head. "As far as I know, it's impossible for anyone to know if they're being scryed upon." "Do you know who she might be?" asked Eragon, surprised by the eagerness in his own voice. "Not really," admitted Brom. "If pressed, I suppose I could come up with a few guesses, but none of them would be very likely. This dream of yours is peculiar. Somehow you managed to scry in your sleep something that you'd never seen before, without saying the words of power. Dreams do occasionally touch the spirit realm, but this is different." "Perhaps to understand this we should search every prison and dungeon until we find the woman," bantered Eragon. He actually thought it would be a good idea. Brom laughed and rode on. Brom's strict training filled nearly every hour as the days slowly blended into weeks. Because of his splint, Eragon was forced to use his left hand whenever they sparred. Before long he could duel as well with his left as he had with his right. By the time they crossed the spine and came to the plains, spring had crept over Alagasia, summoning a multitude of flowers. The bare, deciduous trees were russet with buds, while new blades of grass began to push up between last year's dead stalks. Birds returned from their winter absence to mate and build nests. The travellers followed the Torque River southeast along the edge of the spine. It grew steadily as tributaries flowed into it from every side, feeding its bulging girth. When the river was over a league wide, Brom pointed at the silt islands that dotted the water. "We're close to Leona Lake now," he said. "It's only about 2 leagues away." "Do you think we can get there before nightfall?" asked Eragon. "We can try." Dusk soon made the trail hard to follow, but the sound of the river at their side guided them. When the moon rose, the bright disk provided enough light to see what lay ahead. Leona Lake looked like a thin sheet of silver beaten over the land. The water was so calm and smooth it did not even seem to be liquid. Aside from a bright strip of moonlight reflecting off the surface, it was indistinguishable from the ground. Saphira was on the rocky shore, fanning her wings to dry them. Eragon greeted her and she said, "The water is lovely, deep, cool and clear." "Maybe I'll go swimming tomorrow," he responded. They set up a camp under a strand of trees and were soon asleep. At dawn, Eragon eagerly rushed out to see the lake in daylight. A white-capped expanse of water rippled with fan-shaped patterns where wind brushed it. The pure size of it delighted him. He whooped and ran to the water. "Saphira, where are you? Let's have some fun." The moment Eragon climbed onto her, she jumped out over the water. They soared upward, circling over the lake, but even at that height the opposing shore was not visible. "Would you like to take a bath?" Eragon casually asked Saphira. She grinned wolfishly. "Hold on." She locked her wings and sank to the waves, clipping the crests with her claws. The water sparkled in the sunlight as they sailed over. Eragon whooped again. Then Saphira folded her wings and dived into the lake, her head and neck entering it like a lance. The water hit Eragon like an icy wall, knocking out his breath and almost tearing him off Saphira. He held on tightly as she swam to the surface. With 3 strokes of her feet, she breached it and sent a burst of shimmering water toward the sky. Eragon gasped and shook his hair as Saphira slithered across the lake, using her tail as a rudder. "Ready?" Eragon nodded and took a deep breath, tightening his arms. This time they slid gently under the water. They could see for yards through the unclouded liquid. Saphira twisted and turned in fantastic shapes, slipping through the water like an eel. Eragon felt as if he were riding a sea serpent of legend. Just as his lungs started to cry for air, Saphira arched her back and pointed her head upward. An explosion of droplets haloed them as she leapt into the air, wings snapping open. With 2 powerful flaps she gained altitude. "Wow, that was fantastic!" exclaimed Eragon. "Yes," said Saphira happily, "though it's a pity you can't hold your breath longer." "Nothing I can do about that," he said, pressing water out of his hair. His clothes were drenched and the wind from Saphira's wings chilled him. He pulled at his splint. His wrist itched. Once Eragon was dry, he and Brom saddled the horses and started around Leona Lake in high spirits while Saphira playfully dived in and out of the water. Before dinner, Eragon blocked Zarok's edge in preparation for their usual sparring. Neither he nor Brom moved as they waited for the other to strike first. Eragon inspected their surroundings for anything that might give him an advantage. A stick near the fire caught his attention. Eragon swooped down, grabbed the stick, and hurled it at Brom. The splint got in his way though, and Brom easily sidestepped the piece of wood. The old man rushed forward, swinging his sword. Eragon ducked just as the blade whistled over his head. He growled and tackled Brom ferociously. They pitched to the ground, each struggling to stay on top. Eragon rolled to the side and swept Zarok over the ground at Brom's shins. Brom parried the blow with the hilt of his sword, then jumped to his feet. Twisting as he stood, Eragon attacked again, guiding Zarok through a complex pattern. Sparks danced from their blades as they struck again and again. Brom blocked each blow, his face tight with concentration, but Eragon could tell that he was tiring. The relentless hammering continued as each sought an opening in the other's defences. Then Eragon felt the battle change. Blow by blow he gained advantage. Brom's parry slowed and he lost ground. Eragon easily blocked a stab from Brom. Veins pulsed on the old man's forehead and cords bulged in his neck from the effort. Suddenly confident, Eragon swung Zarok faster than ever, weaving a web of steel around Brom's sword. With a burst of speed, he smashed the flat of his blade against Brom's guard and knocked the sword to the ground. Before Brom could react, Eragon flicked Zarok up to his throat. They stood panting, the red sword tip resting on Brom's collarbone. Eragon slowly lowered his arm and backed away. It was the first time he had bested Brom without resorting to trickery. Brom picked up his sword and sheathed it. Still breathing hard, he said, "We're done for today." "But we just started," said Eragon, startled. Brom shook his head. "I can teach you nothing more of the sword. Of all the fighters I've met, only 3 of them could have defeated me like that, and I doubt any of them could have done it with their left hand." He smiled ruefully. "I may not be as young as I used to be, but I can tell that you're a talented and rare swordsman." "Does this mean we're not going to spar every night?" asked Eragon. "Heh! Oh, you're not getting out of it," laughed Brom. "But we'll go easier now. It's not as important if we miss a night here or there." He wiped his brow. "Just remember, if you ever have the misfortune to fight an elf, trained or not, female or male, expect to lose. They, along with dragons and other creatures of magic, are many times stronger than nature intended. Even the weakest elf could easily overpower you. The same goes for the Razak. They are not human and tire much more slowly than we do." "Is there any way to become their equal?" asked Eragon. He sat cross-legged by Saphira. "You fought well," she said. He smiled. Brom seated himself with a shrug. "There are a few, but none are available to you now. Magic will let you defeat all but the strongest enemies. For those, you'll need Saphira's help, plus a great deal of luck. Remember, when creatures of magic actually use magic, they can accomplish things that could kill a human because of their enhanced abilities." "How do you fight with magic?" asked Eragon. "What do you mean?" "Well," he said, leaning on an elbow, "suppose I was attacked by a shade. How could I block his magic? Most spells take place instantaneously, which makes it impossible to react in time. And even if I could, how would I nullify an enemy's magic? It seems I would have to know my opponent's intention before he acted." He paused. "I just don't see how it can be done. Whoever attacked first would win." Brom sighed. "What you were talking about, a wizard's duel, if you will, is extremely dangerous. Haven't you ever wondered how Galbatorix was able to defeat all of the riders with the help of only a dozen or so traders?" "I never thought about it," acknowledged Eragon. "There are several ways. Some you'll learn about later, but the main one is that Galbatorix was, and still is, a master of breaking into people's minds. You see, in a wizard's duel there are strict rules that each side must observe, or else both contestants will die. To begin with, no one uses magic until one of the participants gains access to the other's mind." Saphira curled her tail comfortably around Eragon and asked, "Why wait? By the time an enemy realizes that you've attacked, it will be too late for him to act." Eragon repeated the question out loud. Brom shook his head. "No, it won't. If I were to suddenly use my power against you, Eragon, you would surely die. But in the brief moment before you were destroyed, there would be a time for a counterattack. Therefore, unless one combatant has a death wish, neither side attacks until one of them has breached the other's defences." "Then what happens?" Eragon inquired. Brom shrugged and said, "Once you're inside your enemy's mind, it's easy enough to anticipate what he will do and prevent it. Even with that advantage, it's still possible to lose if you don't know how to counteract spells." He filled and lit his pipe. "And that requires extraordinarily quick thinking. Before you can defend yourself, you have to understand the exact nature of the forces directed at you. If you're being attacked with heat, you have to know whether it's being conveyed to you through air, fire, light, or some other medium. Only once that's known can you combat the magic by, for instance, chilling the heated material." "Oh, it sounds difficult." "Extremely," confirmed Brom. A plume of smoke rose from his pipe. Seldom can people survive such a duel for more than a few seconds. The enormous amount of effort and skill required condemns anyone without the proper training to a quick death. Once you've progressed, I'll start teaching you the necessary methods. In the meantime, if you ever find yourself facing a wizard's duel, I suggest you run away as fast as you can.